Hey everyone, Dan here with the Designer So On with John Schrader. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. You're in the woods, I see again.
Yeah, I'm still
All
in the woods.
right.
See, that's like we talked last week, how this says something about me, the things I enjoy and stuff like that. This also says something about me that I stretch myself too thin and I don't have time to get my picture changed.
There you go. All right. Hey, today we're welcoming Alex and Ben from Canvas. The
Everyone.
parent company is Occipital, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about scanning your house to get your as-built files. And not only that, they're going to send you a file that works in Chief Architect. So there you go. So these guys are the first company to do that, and I'm pretty excited to dig into this a little bit deeper. And I've had a chance to use the software. I kind of just ran into it, and I don't know how we got in touch with each other, but had a chance to scan a house and compare the differences. So I'm going to start out by showing that, and then that'll finish that for me. And then we're going to dive into your presentation. Okay. So let me give a few minutes and show everybody what I came up with when I went through this scanning process, and we'll take it from there. And by the way, you guys on the call, feel free to ask questions. It's all about answering your questions about how this process works. It's pretty cool. Technology is coming. It's right here now. So it's looking good. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you what we came up with. Let me just show the whole screen here so you can see this a little bit better. So I went through this house. I did two different things. I did okay, here's let me get to the actual finished plan. So here is the house that is, let me turn off the reference display. So here's the actual plan of the house. This is the actual layout of the project, okay? So if we go in here, I've got a lot of stuff turned off, but I was after finding out how this canvas works. So I scanned this area first, just to check it out on a smaller basis. And then I did the whole house where we did all of the rooms to see how they came together. Let me show you the results that I came up with that happened. So after, Ben and Alex are going to explain how you scan, and I'll do all of that good stuff. I'm going to show you the results of what I came up with. So let me go to the website here, and I'll show you what it looks like online. So the 3-room scan that you're going to get, when you send in the plan, when you scan it, it's going to look like this. Looks kind of weird. It's just like, what the heck? Looks like you spray foamed over the whole thing. So you guys can explain why it looks like this. I don't know. When it's reprocessed, this is what happens when you send the file into Canvas, and they send back a link that, yep, the processing's done. Now I can zip around here and start to look at things. I mean, it's not perfect. And again, this was my first time doing it, so I probably could have, done some things a bit better. But that's the basic of how the scan took. That scan maybe took me 5 minutes, maybe 6, to just scan and walk around. Maybe just a touch longer than that, but it didn't take very long at all. And I was done. And I hit send, and it went in to be reprocessed. And then from there, I ordered the CAD file. And this is how you would work. So this is the CAD file. And the reason we're here today is talk about the Chief Architect CAD file. We're not here to talk about the DWG or the DA or whatever the other formats that get done. So there's the final product, okay? And it came out pretty good. So I was pretty pleased. So I'm looking at it online now. So if I go into Chief Architect and show that file, it's going to look like this. So if I go here to the 3-room file and I bring up my Chief Architect overview, here's that file that I received. I haven't really I don't think I've done anything to this file. This is what I received. Not bad. I don't remember. We'll talk about cost later, what I would have had to pay for this if I were doing this as part of a project, but it wasn't much. I mean, it was like, bam. Let's take a look at how accurate it is compared to the actual. And it's not bad. So when I look at the family room down here, the red dotted lines are the actual plan. So when I look here, and I don't remember where I placed it so that the points came together. I'm not quite sure. But so we're off a little bit here. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a little bit here on this wall. And we're off a lit and the island's a little bit off. Other than that, it's not bad. It's acceptable for me to do a conceptual plan on a project, and I'm pleased with that. So I could, 5-6 minutes, I got to scan. I can go back to my office a few days later. I'm going to get back a file that I can start working with, and I didn't have to do anything else. Done. So I would, the one thing I would say about using this or any scanning software is that use the software, get project conceptualized, get it close, get it done, get it sold, with the idea that you are going to go back and you are going to verify everything that goes into that project. So, I mean, if you're going to have cabinets done in this project, you're going to have the cabinet people verify those anyway. Now let's take a quick look at the whole house and see what that looks like. So with that, what I had to do was go scan each room, and it ended up creating a bunch of different files. So it ended up creating files for each room, and I won't show you those because that would be just like I did with the big 3-room one. Each room would be individual. But this is what I received back when I sent that in. Now, this took a little bit longer because there's a little bit more hands-on work for these guys to put this together. Again, it's not bad. I mean, it's not the whole house. I mean, Canvas right now is mostly for the inside of the house, but it did a good job, if I'm doing a lot of work on the inside. I could take Google Earth and I could finish up the roof on this and kind of clean things up and get it looking a little bit better. Let's go back to Chief now and take a look at that and how that came out. So when I get into the whole house and, okay, so here's the actual, let me turn the reference on and show you the scan I got back from Occipital, or from Canvas, I mean. So actually, let me find, here's the actual file I got back. So when I look at this and I bring up an overview, here's the Chief, again, this is the Chief Architect file. It took me maybe half hour to scan the whole house, give or take. It's pretty close to that. So here's the first floor. I mean, it's got most of the components in, the elements in that I need. Second floor on top of that stacks up reasonably well. You guys did a nice job on the stairs coming up. I mean, there's some details in here that really came back nice. I mean, it's things that I wouldn't have expected that were picked up in something like this. So this is pretty cool. This was very cool. Now let's compare it, actual. And the results on this were a little bit not as good as the 3-room, okay? Because now you're taking all these individual room scans and they're putting them together into one file. So you can see that, and I brought the plans together down here. So the Canvas file and then my file for the actual plan, so we can see where, there's a few areas where it's off a little bit. And we'll have Ben and Alex talk about that and how that can be improved when you're doing a project like this. So there are things that you can do to give them the information so they can get this much more accurate without you spending a lot of time on it. So there you go. So that's what I came up with. I was very impressed, very pleased with the results. And again, knowing what I know now about information I could have sent them about the whole house, yeah, we would have had much better results. So with that, let's bring everybody back on here. And Alex and Ben, again, thanks for being here and for working with us or working with me on this. This is kind of fun. And I know, John, you do a ton of as-builts. So you're always out in the field doing this. You haven't had a chance to test this yet. You will get that chance coming up here. So I don't know which one of you guys were going to do a little presentation, but why don't we start out just, tell me a little bit about Canvas and what it's all about. Whoever wants to talk.
Absolutely. I'll start with the presentation. We've got some nice visuals to sort of explain it. I already see
cool.
a comment asking what you use to scan, so we'll get into all that. And then Alex has been at the company for over 6 years, well before it even launched. I'm relatively new, so he knows the product inside and out, and he'll be able to answer some of the deep technical questions that I'm assuming some of you may have. But
awesome.
Let me pull up our presentation. Let me know when it's on screen, and I can.
You're on screen, and have at it.
Excellent. Well, as I mentioned, I'm Ben. I lead marketing for Canvas. I'm excited to be here today, and we'll talk to you about how Canvas can accelerate your workflow with Chief Architect. And as I mentioned, since I'm relatively new, Alex, who's our Vice President of Product, was here for years, and he'll be able to answer the really tough questions. I'll kick things off with a brief run through of Canvas. I'll start by explaining 3D scanning, what you need to get started, how to scan a space, and most important, our Scan to CAD service. But first, I'm going to play a brief video that explains Canvas and highlights our recent launch of iPhone support.
Your next iPhone isn't just a phone. It's a new kind of power tool. With Canvas, you can use the iPhone 12 Pro to take thousands of measurements per second and digitize homes in minutes. Just download the Canvas app, stand close to the center of a room, and slowly spin like you're painting the walls with your phone. You can get a colorized 3D model in minutes and measure anything. Upload and share your 3D model with anyone. And you can even use your 3D scans to generate editable professional-grade CAD formats like Chief Architect, Revit, and SketchUp, so you can plan, quote, and design. With Canvas, your next power tool fits in your pocket.
Cool.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching that video.
Yeah.
So Canvas is an app that creates 3D models of rooms in seconds and entire homes in minutes. The app is simple to use, and scanning a room is like taking a video, except that it captures depth information in addition to imagery. Canvas features cutting-edge computer vision and artificial intelligence technology, but it's easy to use. It doesn't require someone like Dan to teach you how to use it. The idea is that the app automates as much as possible to help you save time. The ability to capture 3D spaces used to require tripod-based laser scanners that cost in the tens of thousands of dollars, making it only accessible to large commercial firms. A couple of years ago, our parent company introduced the structure sensor, which gave iPads the ability to 3D scan. However, it required installation and calibration, which made it more difficult to get started and more challenging to carry around. Now with the latest Apple Pro devices, the power to scan spaces literally fits in your pocket or bag, and all you have to do is download and start scanning. There's a ton you can do for free with the scans, and I'll get into that in a second, but I have a feeling you'll get the most value out of our Scan to CAD service, which processes the scans into editable, design-ready files in Chief Architect, as well as Revit, SketchUp, and 2020 Design Live. We can also create 2D floor plans too. And Canvas was designed to capture residential interiors, but we do have customers that use it to scan offices, restaurants, warehouses, and even industrial facilities. For 99% accuracy, you'll need either the iPhone 12 Pro or Pro Max, which were just released in October, or the iPad Pro that was released in March. That's because these devices contain a Lidar sensor, which sends invisible laser beams out and measures how long it takes for those beams to reflect back. This is the same technology that's used by self-driving cars, like Tesla, to see the world around them. If you have an older iPhone, you can still use Canvas, but it will be slightly less accurate as those devices don't contain LiDAR sensors. In these cases, Canvas uses computer vision technology to determine distances using the camera. And I know the top question you're all going to have for me, so I'll cut to the chase. We're working on supporting Android devices. While we don't have a firm date, we're aiming for supporting it this summer. My email address is ben@canvas.io. That's ben@canvas.io. It's also available on the Chief Experts Academy website. Shoot me an email, and I'll make sure you're notified as soon as we launch on Android devices. As of today, the scanning process is slightly different depending on if you're on an iPad or an iPhone, although we're working on making the experience the same, which should happen in a few months. Like I previously said, the process is like taking a video that also happens to measure at the same time. With an iPad, you walk around the space, moving the tablet up and down as if you were painting the walls. With an iPhone, you stand as close to the center of the room as you can and simply spin around, again, moving your phone up and down as if you were painting the walls with your phone. I'll play the video again to help illustrate it. And you can scan room by room and then order the Scan to CAD processing by the room. So you could scan a whole home, but only pay to process the rooms your client has hired you to update. If you're able to upsell your client to expand the scope of work, you could then submit additional rooms to Scan to CAD later. And we can also combine all of your individual scans to create one large Chief Architect file for the entire home. We find it takes about 30 to 60 seconds to capture most rooms, and the average home takes about 20 to 30 minutes to capture. It's important to note that this isn't just capturing the measurements of the overall room dimensions, but rather everything: the size and placement of windows, doors, and even details like light switches and outlets and HVAC registers. You don't have to clean the room, although I'm sure you'd like it if your clients did that before you got there, but you need to open doors to make sure it's clear where doors lead, especially if we're merging your scans together to create one large CAD file, and ensure important details like the edges of windows are visible. So that might require moving the drapes to ensure we can see the corners. Once you complete your scan, you'll immediately have a 3D mesh of the space. For the next few months on iPad, you'll have to upload your scan for reprocessing to get a colorized version, but the experience will soon be like the iPhone experience, where the reprocessing happens on device. Either way, you can use the 3D mesh on your device to revisit the space, as I am here in my in-laws' mountain house, where you can move around and capture measurements as if you were there. And then in a moment, I'll show you how you can even share it with others via our 3D web viewer, which can be accessed from any internet-connected device. We find it's easier to capture measurements in the web viewer than in the app, since most people have better control with a mouse than tapping on an iPad screen, especially an iPhone screen. So as you'll see here in the video, I'm capturing measurements of the doors and windows, and you can do that in the app as I am here. And then in a moment, you'll see I'll click on the share button up on the top left, and then you can email that link out, you can copy it, you could even post it to social media if you wanted to share a product that way. But this is a way to share it with collaborators. And then this is the web viewer, which Dan had showed you earlier, and this shows both the original unprocessed scan, the reprocessed scan, which has the color, and then this room in particular, I haven't submitted to scan to CAD, so we don't have that CAD model in the web viewer, but if you had done that, you would see it there. But as you can see here, these are the measuring tools that allow you to have better control when measuring virtually in our web viewer. And so while that 3D mesh is very powerful on its own, I think the reason all of you are here is to take that space in the chief architect so you can start reimagining and remodeling it. And that's where Scan to CAD comes in. We have many customers who call this the easy button for as-builts. I'll show you what the upload process is like here, but with a few taps, you can upload your scan to our Scan to CAD service, and within 2 business days, we'll send you a design-ready, editable chief architect file straight to your inbox. And I know Dan isn't as interested in them, but in addition to the plan file, you'll also receive a DWG and a DAE file as well. This currently costs $39 per scan, which is roughly 1 room, and about $400 for an entire home. I do want to mention that we're just days away from updating our pricing model to one based on square footage, but I want to be clear that it's not a price hike. The intent is that the cost will even out for most customers. And one of the fun things about this price change is that our $5 fee for merging multiple scans will disappear. And you'll see that the file is built for native use. Everything is structured and organized as if you built it yourself. And as I mentioned before, if you happen to use other CAD programs like Revit and SketchUp, or sometimes only need a 2-dimensional floor plan, Scan to CAD can handle those too. And so that ends my presentation, and now we can go to questions and explore things more in depth.
Cool. Hey, that was a good presentation. That answered a lot of questions already, I think. John, let's start with you. What questions do you have?
Just a quick question about Android and iPhone 2. My understanding is iPhone 12, all the iPhone 12s don't have the Lidar sensor in them, right?
Correct. It's only
the Pro models. Yeah, so the Pro and the Pro Max, the iPhone 12 baseline does not. You can still use the non-LiDAR version of Canvas, but you're going to have that difference in accuracy.
Right.
Our suggestion is if you were going to be upgrading your phone anyway and feel that Canvas would be an important part of your workflow, it's worth the additional investment to get the Pro model.
Right, I agree. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they needed to be aware of that they couldn't just get an iPhone 12 and expect it to work. It's got to be the Pro version.
Yeah, and there's also the same, I think, confusion with iPads as well, since there are a whole slew of iPad models. There's the iPad Air, there's the traditional iPad, and the iPad Pro. And at this point, Apple is only including the Lidar sensor in the Pro model, which and that was in the 2020 version, which was released in March. So
Right.
if you have an older Pro model, it won't have that Lidar sensor either.
So the key is to make sure it supports LiDAR.
Yep.
And then how about Samsung? What are we looking for if we want to get a new Samsung device? What are we going to need to look for?
So
Not Samsung, but Android.
Yeah, Samsung made the fun decision recently to take out the so there's a they had a time of flight camera which is similar to LiDAR in the S20, and they took it out in the 21. I'm pretty sure was just announced like yesterday or something, which is a surprising move and kind of a bummer. But there's probably going to be other Android devices that do add similar types of sensing. If you remember from several years ago, there was actually one called the Fab 2 Pro that had a time of flight camera that was it was from Lenovo, and that was Android. So there's not a lot on Android that have the necessary hardware today, but you're going to see more of them.
So what we're looking for with an Android is time of flight support.
Yeah, time of flight, LiDAR, anything with a depth sensor. That's kind of the broad category. Is it's called a depth sensor.
Okay. Then I did get a chance. I think it was Canvas I got to use for a little bit. And if I'm remembering right, and it was Canvas, I remember the instructions said that you don't really want to back up when you're going through a house, but yet you
back up.
Like you're going through a house and, I missed that spot over there. I need to go get that.
Oh, yeah.
So
generally, you don't want to rescan things over and over because it can basically like recreate geometry multiple times, and that can make the data a little bit messier. It's not going to kill you. And especially with the new LiDAR sensors, it's a lot more robust to that kind of thing than the previous generation. But it's still kind of best practices just to go through once, paint the walls, paint the details up and down, move around the space in a continuous loop. You kind of think about it like if you're moving around a space, you don't want to just be like zigzagging all
you want to try to do it methodically, but again, if you miss something, you could go back and get it and then go again.
Mm-hmm. Start over,
or start over.
That's because you're not doing the whole house at once anyway, so you're just going to start over. So when I scanned the 3 rooms in that one scan I showed you, in fact, let me bring that up here quick because I think I have. Let me show my screen here.
Always looking for that. How big of a room do you need to be in to make this work? How small of a room can you be in?
So you can really be in any typical size, like residential size room. We've scanned small closets, big areas. Generally, if you're going above like 10,000 square feet, that's where you might want to be considering other scanning technology, just for like ease of use and because the accuracy that Ben mentioned of about 1%, that's going to start to add up more in absolute terms on very, very large areas. So we typically say, residential scale is where we recommend it. But once you're starting to get kind of above that 10,000 square feet, that's where things can start to break a little bit more.
I was thinking more of how far away from a wall do you have to keep the camera?
About 2 feet.
2 feet?
Yeah, I did some small rooms and they turned out pretty well. Now this was my very first scan that I did, and I should have done it over right away, but I didn't. And I did go over this area where the fireplace wall is a second time. And you can see how it gets real fuzzy, kind of goofy. You get kind of the double everything. So that's not what you want to be doing.
And one of the pieces of advice we always offer when you're scanning is you want to start in a portion of the room where there is interesting or different geometry. If you start in the middle of a blank white wall, it's very difficult for the app to recognize where it is and track the movements as you move through the space.
Sure.
So we recommend starting in a corner where you might have a bookshelf or some sort of piece of furniture, and that helps the app have a better sense of where it is in the space.
So let's talk about that for a second. Now, my scan here is definitely not as pretty as the one you showed in your video where you were scanning that room and it was nice and clean. Tell me a little bit about the difference there and why yours was a little bit better than this.
Yeah, I can take that. There's a couple reasons. One is so we were showing on the iPhone. The iPhone has a little bit newer technology in terms of what's called texturing. And so texturing is the colorization of that 3D model, and also some of the underlying computer vision stuff too. So that will be coming to iPad. It's just not yet.
Yeah, because I was using an iPad Pro for this.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was also, if I recall, a few months ago, our tech is always improving and improving. So things are getting better and better. But what you saw in the video is what's coming to all devices.
Cool. All right.
And if you are scanning one, this is kind of a workflow question and what you care about. So if you're scanning one room at a time, generally you're going to get a cleaner scan than you will, and a more accurate scan than if you're scanning a huge area like all those rooms put together.
Right. And here it is like a big room. So I did have to slide down and around. And so I wasn't able to just stand in the middle of the room. I did have to move along the walls. But still, I still turned out okay, I thought. I mean, again, first time, and you know.
Were you showing that on your screen? Because I think I'm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I removed it from the screen. Let me add it back to the screen.
I know everyone wants to see my COVID hair, but.
So again, yeah. So here I slid. You know, I was like, I had to go around this table, and then I had to go between the island and around here, and then I had to get enough of the island in to capture it. So. So yeah,
you're actually just walking around, and you could see on the iPad as it was filling in the areas. What
exactly? Yeah. So as I was walking an iPad, I could see the areas that were scanned because they looked like this, like it had been spray foamed over it, and so it was easy to tell.
It's pretty robust as far as moving around. So it's one of the nice things is more recently. A lot of the improvements in the underlying technology, both on the computer vision software side as well as on the sensing hardware, makes it more robust to people not always following directions perfectly. So if you go back like 2 years ago with the structure sensor, you had to be more careful about scanning like exactly this way and doing exactly what we tell you. Now, obviously, there's best practices, but we've made the tech a lot more robust to being able to handle if, a dog comes into view and things like that.
Yeah, and I can see once, I mean, this is technology. It's always evolving and improving. I mean, hardware is going to get better. Your technology is going to get better. So it's only going to get better. But I still found it acceptable for what I need to get going on someone's drawing.
I mean, I'll say even in the I think less than 6 months I've been with the company, the texturing has improved dramatically. Where the images that you can capture with the iPhone, it is approaching virtual tour quality as opposed to the the image of your kitchen that we just were looking at.
So so let's go to the questions over here because there's a pretty good discussion going on over.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Todd says, my problem is 400 is more money than it takes me to measure and lay out in Chief. 400 was for the whole house. That wasn't just for this room. The room, I think, was what, $90 or something like that, or wouldn't have even been that.
$40. I think.
Yeah,
the room is 39. We are going to be switching to the square foot model. So I actually mentioned like it's not meant to be like a price hike, but Chief users actually will probably end up making out ahead in terms of that price change because we're unifying all of our 3D outputs. So it's going to be 15 cents square foot across the board. So for a Chief Architect user, it's probably going to end up cheaper as we move to a square footage model. But you're right.
With that, you're getting an actual Chief Architect plan file.
Yes, you're getting a .plan file as well as the DWG and the DAE, and you get the scan. So that reprocessed mesh, the kind of colorized scan, that comes with any order that you upload. You don't have to go through Scan to CAD to get that. And so different projects and different workflows are going to warrant something different. So I'll be the first person to tell you that there will be some jobs where that Scan to CAD pricing will not make sense because you're doing a small rectangular room that isn't complicated to draw, and maybe the client, it's a low budget project and you just want to scan it and you just want to measure off of the scan, and it's not going to make sense for you to process it through Chief Architect. Versus bigger projects where it's a complicated home, or it's like the area where you scan, Dan, where it's kind of like 3 areas that have lots of detail. That's where it's going to make much more of a difference. But it's a tool like a drill or a hammer. There's going to be different tools for different projects that you're going to want to use, and we try to make it very easy for you to be able to choose your own adventure as far as, this job I want to use Scan to CAD on, this job I just want to use the scan on and measure off of the scan. We try to make that pretty flexible.
And I think measuring off the scan, what does that cost?
It's free, just measuring off the scan.
That's there right away as you took it, you can use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as you get that scan, you can start pulling dimensions right out of that.
And you won't be able to do that today. That's coming, right? Or is that available today?
Oh no, you can do that today. You can measure off of the mesh itself. On the iPhone right now, we are able to do the processing locally where you can get the color back right away. On the iPad, you have to upload it first, but again, that's coming where you're going to be able to do that on iPad as well. But either way, we're not trying to make money off of like you generating the scan itself. Like the goal is that if you are just looking to pull like one dimension at a time, and that's all you need, then you should just be able to use the scan and be off on your merry way and not have to go through Scan to CAD.
And then Alex, I think also something that we've talked about in terms of that cost is, I think it depends on your workflow and when in your project life cycle you are doing the scan. And so you might be able to speak more to that in terms of, we have a lot of customers who might scan it initially for planning, and then in rooms where you do need higher level of detail, for example, cabinets and installing woodwork and milling, there you would want to remeasure for increased accuracy. But there are a lot of jobs, I believe, where the accuracy we provide is enough to do that initial planning and some of the overall work.
Yeah.
So both with accuracy. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, who you find using this right now?
So design build firms, remodel and renovation firms, architecture firms, and interior design firms are the big ones.
So us. I mean, our people that are on the call here. So
we definitely see a long tail of like people measuring industrial facilities, and fix and flip is a big one. So people that are not necessarily like remodeling firms, but they're doing remodeling as part of their project. But we see all sorts of weird stuff.
We even see people scanning camper vans and buses to adapt them to van life, living RVs and that type of thing.
There you go, John.
We've seen some really unique cases.
There's a specific Mercedes Sprinter van that I have seen scanned over and over and over again.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see it for things like, your insurance reports where if you had a damaged fire or something like that, you scan it. You want to take inventory of all your your goods. That'd be a good use for that. I mean, there's tons of uses for this. I mean, just having the scans themselves are pretty valuable versus taking a whole bunch of pictures. I mean, with the scan, you've got it in one file. Versus having
and that's one of the things that we talk about is having basically this digital twin that you can revisit virtually at any point. So once you have that scan, you can revisit it to remeasure or to order for different file formats as well. And to that point that we were talking about before about workflow and when you might order or when you might not, you can scan the entire home on visit one and say, hey, I just want the kitchen. And then a few weeks go by and the customer says, hey, I actually want to work on the bathroom now too. You can convert that later. So we always really recommend scanning the entire site so that you have that data on visit one. And then you look extremely professional, extremely ahead of the game, because you can always say, oh, I've already got that data. Let me just convert it and I can start doing some concept design for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So question here from Stephen. If you scan the center of a room, how do you get both sides of the kitchen island or the room with furniture out of the way? Okay, so yeah, I could, and I had that issue on mine too, where I had the island and it came out okay because I overlapped the scan enough where it came into view, but on the final drawing, it was not in the exact place. So what do you recommend for that kind of thing? Scan the island separately?
You can scan the island separately as long as there's overlap. If you are going to scan the island separately, I would make sure that you kind of scan like from the cabinets, get the island, get all around the island, and get the other side of the cabinets. That way we know the relation of the kitchen island to the rest of the scene. Like if you just scan the cabinet in isolation, then we kind of don't know where to put it. But as long as there's reference of how it overlaps, it's fine. You can scan it separately. You can scan it basically going around. So as you're kind of going around that area, just making sure that you kind of go up, go down on the island, and just repeat as you move around that island. You can also take multiple scans if it's easier to get one side of the island in one scan and one side of the island in the other. We can merge different data together. Sure. Most of our scans tend to be, or most of our projects tend to be broken up into many different scans. So it's no problem at all to do that.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, worst case, you could just measure it and keep notes and then put it in when you get your plan done. So,
and the other thing too, I think that we wanted to speak to is if you do have rooms where critical dimensions are important and you take those manually using a tape measure or a laser distance measure, you can submit those measurements to us as we process your scan. And then what we can do is ensure, we will manually force your measurements over the measurements that were captured using the app. So if you were doing a kitchen and you took specific measurements in there, we can make sure that those measurements are reflected in the CAD file you receive.
Okay.
So if I did 6 rooms on one floor and I was able to take a measurement all the way from one end of the house to the other end of the house, and let's say that was 40 feet, you could take those 6 rooms and make sure they fit within the 40 feet.
Yeah, so we would basically use that as a prior, your dimension, to know that, okay, that's a known critical dimension to adjust the rest of the data that comes back from that scan.
Okay, and how about taking laser measurements of like a door jamb and that kind of thing? That would help too?
Yep, it is totally up to you. So we make it extremely flexible that if you want to submit no reference dimensions, then you'll get back the 1%-ish that you will get back from the Lidar sensor. A lot of that is driven just for awareness by the hardware itself. Some of it is by the software, and we can improve that over time, absolutely. And the sensors themselves are getting better and better too, but that kind of inherent 1% is coming from the Apple's Lidar sensor itself. But you can submit no reference dimensions, you can submit 1, you can submit 100, and it's kind of up to you. In that way, it's always going to be as accurate as what you would do yourself if you send those measurements to us.
Can you talk a little bit more about the accuracy? Because to be honest with you, there's some comments here on the side that they're saying that's not accurate enough. Right. And 1% is not accurate enough. That's 1 inch off in 8 feet, basically. Mm-hmm. So how do you keep it more accurate?
So the absolute best, easiest way is any dimensions that are going to be really critical to get less than 1%. If you send those to us, then those will come back in your model. So anything you send us will override whatever dimensions we have in the scan. Obviously, if you do that for 1,000 dimensions in the home, then it kind of defeats the point.
Right.
If you're doing that for the overall dimensions of the space, then it can be a good ROI because you only have to take a handful of dimensions now, and both the all the other dimensions that you weren't capturing before, so all the other detail that you saw in that chief architect model that Dan showed, all of that is captured by the scan, and all of that modeling is also happening automatically, and you're not having to do that yourself in terms of manually drawing everything in chief. Right. So that's the best way, is to send those reference dimensions to us, and we'll always take whatever. If you want to send us 1, if you want to send us 20, if you want to send us a plan that you have, we'll use that as reference. That's totally fine. But this technology is getting better and better too. Mm-hmm. So if we go back to when I joined going on 6 years ago, there was no way that you were going to get 1% without being a super user. Like, you had to be like really, really careful to be able to do it. Now, someone who's just kind of waving their iPad around is going to get that. So both the software of the computer vision is getting more and more accurate. The way that we process scan to CAD is getting more and more accurate as it becomes more and more automated, more and more kind of AI driven. And the
AI, your AI is your artificial intelligence. So you've got a mixture of people touching it versus automatic going on here in this process.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's a mix of artificial intelligence, customized process and tooling, and a little bit of human QA in the loop to make sure that when you get things back, you're getting things back in like the right recognized elements, that everything works out the way that it's supposed to. So knowing that like an electrical fixture is an electrical fixture, there's some human oversight of that sort of stuff.
Sure.
One thing that I think would be good to touch on, I saw that is a question that a lot of people ask when it comes to 3D scan data and people's home data, is what happens to that data. So Nick, I'm glad that you asked that. And like, do you use the data for your own advertising or anything like that? We do not. I know that there are some companies out there that's part of their terms of service is, hey, you submit your data for our service, and then you're going to find it, advertised, and we'll use it in whatever ways we absolutely want to. We have no interest in doing that. It does stay stored. If you want to delete it, you absolutely can, but we store it for you so that you have access to it over time. But if you do want to delete that data, you're absolutely able to. But we do not use that data without your permission for advertising. Ben sometimes will reach out to customers to say, hey, you've done a lot of jobs with us. Could we use one of your projects? And then that might show up in advertising, but it would only be with your explicit.
It's always, I was going to say, because I didn't want people to see a discrepancy and see real scans in some of our ads or in our sample data package. But whenever we do that, that's always with the user's permission, who typically also gets the homeowner's permission, so that you don't have to worry about your home or your client's home ending up on the internet somewhere. We always request permission, and
I could see a client being a little upset if they found their home online all of a sudden with all their stuff in it. Not cool. Yeah. But yeah, that's cool. So basically, Stephen had a question that true length and width of a room would create better accuracy of window and door size placements and everything else. So
generally, yes. It doesn't explicitly, in the sense that like if you send us overall wall measurements, that I can't give you a metric that increases door and window accuracy by X%, but generally it does. Generally, we see in practice that it does have that effect.
Does the scan account for wall thicknesses by scanning doorways?
If you capture it and it's visible in the scan, then that will be accounted for. Often because you're scanning the interiors, it's not, and we have to fall back on construction standards. But again, if you submit that data to us, then we will incorporate it in your final model. So you can submit any notes and reference dimensions and things like that, including things like wall thickness that might not be observed, and that'll get it incorporated into your model.
Jeff's asking, does it note recessed lights, outlets, everything like that?
Outlets, yes. Electrical fixtures, so you showed in the model, outlets, switches, things like that, that's all included. Recessed lighting and lighting in general does not. One of the reasons, I guess the two reasons for that both kind of fall under lighting can be hard to scan directly because you don't want to scan like directly over like a blaring light. It can overexpose the camera and throw off tracking. And scanning the entire ceiling directly. Ceilings are often very blank, not a lot of detail that's happening on that ceiling, and that can make it harder to scan as well. So we don't recommend trying to scan lighting directly, and that's why we don't include them in the model. But that is something that we're looking at as a potential improvement area for sure.
So yeah, I see some of the electrical was in the scan that I received from you. So yeah, that's cool.
If you were to just a quick aside on the recessed lighting and stuff. If you were to take a target, say like a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and somehow attach it to the ceiling and have that up there, that would help with something like that, wouldn't it? And not have the lights turned on.
Not having the lights turned on would affect the scan more negatively for other reasons, because then it's kind of like blinding the camera. We use both the Lidar sensor as well as the color camera, so it's kind of like it's like covering one eye. It handicaps the scanning. We don't have a mechanism in place for like a target and stuff like that. Fortunately, they're pretty easy to be able to add into Chief Architect later. And you can also add annotations too. So if you take the scan, you can put annotations as a note to yourself for later. This is where the light fixtures are, and that's all scale accurate. So you'll be able to measure the distance to your annotation and pull that.
So that'll save in the scan. So Vicky's saying, so I would have to get the exterior house dimensions anyway, plus dimensions of critical interior spaces, plus do the scan starting, make the scan a moot point. Again, Vicky, let's take a look at, first of all, this is an introduction to this technology. I mean, it's been around. How long has it been around? This technology?
Canvas has been around since end of 2016 is when the product.
4 years.
So
so still relatively in its infancy. Well, I guess not in the tech world. 4 years, 5 years is a lifetime in the tech world, but it's going to get incrementally better, faster. Boom, boom. It's hardware and software. So I think let's just take a look at this right now, and let's use this. Again, I'm saying that for this software, it's an excellent resource to use if you need to get in and out of a project quickly. You got to get, you got a lot going on. You got to, you want to go scan the kitchen and the few rooms that you're going to be doing some work on, get back to your office, lay out some new ideas, get the job sold. Now you're going to go back and take some final measurements, verify everything. So this is a way for you to get going quickly on your projects. Now, I sell an as-built service that I've done for years. I mean, for me to go measure this house and give you, I'm going to be within an inch accuracy everywhere. It's going to include everything in the house, and it's going to cost you $1,000, $1,200 for me to go do that as-built, because I'm going to spend a day measuring that whole house and drawing it in chief. This, again, if I'm doing just to find out if I'm going to go try to sell this job and get the prices worked out for what we're going to do, show them ideas, I could see this being an excellent tool to get that project going without having to do a full-blown as-built on the beginning of the project. I know, John, what do you want to say about that?
Can you scan the exterior?
With some limitations. So you generally, bright sunlight can interfere with the 3D sensor, and most forms of 3D sensor, whether it's the Apple Lidar sensor or other forms, like the structure sensor had the same issue.
Even a laser measure can, if it's too bright, it's going to have a hard time.
Right. You got some height limitations on the scan too, right?
What's that?
Is there some height limitations on how high you can scan?
Yeah, that's the other reason, is the range of the Lidar sensor is about 5 meters. So if you're talking about, this is like 16-ish feet. So if you're talking about second stories and roofs and things like that, that can start to be a bit of a challenge. And we don't advise people getting on ladders and trying to scan at the same time as being on the ladder. We don't take liability for people trying to scan on ladders. But those are the two main caveats. If it's a one-story house and it's an overcast day, Scan to CAD can process exteriors just fine. We do that all the time. You can, as long as we can register that data together. So as long as there's some overlapping point that if you scan through the front door, or it's clear that like this window corresponds to this window on the interior, as long as there's sufficient reference data, there's no problem for us to process that, and we do that fairly common.
Can the iSense or iPad be used to produce an accurate scan?
I was not expecting an iSense question. So the iSense is a previous generation of the structure sensor that was sold as a partnership with 3D Systems. It can be used with Canvas. It's basically a structure sensor. So yes,
structure sensor you're mentioning.
So this,
why don't you hold that up?
This was what the solution was prior to the introduction of the LiDAR sensor embedded in the iPad Pro. You had to purchase this sensor from us and install it with this bracket, a special wide-angle lens adapter, And this is how it worked prior to last summer.
Okay. And now we've got the LiDAR technology that replaces that or supplements that.
Replaces it. What we found is that the onboarding process was very challenging. I mean, we had a lot of customers who did do it, but it took time to install the bracket, to install the sensor, and then you had to calibrate it to ensure that it was aligned properly with the color camera, the photo camera on the iPad itself. And so basically within a few months of us supporting the new LiDAR-enabled iPad Pro, our customers were telling us this is much easier. And so that sort of adopted our shift into recommending people simply purchase a LiDAR-enabled device.
And we do still support the structure sensor, both the original sensor as well as the more recent second generation of the sensor. So if you did get one for a different reason, so we still recommend it for object scanning. Is going to be a lot better than the LiDAR sensor for getting like detailed object scans. So it'll still work if you are using a structure sensor.
Correct. I didn't mean to imply that. And Jim actually has a great question about if you don't have a good initial scan and we can't do an accurate model or drawing, do you get a break or have you redo it? So the first thing I'll say is that we offer a complimentary scan review process. So if you are new, you can take a scan, submit it. I believe the code is scan review, and there won't be a charge for that scan, and one of our team members will take a look at your scan and give you feedback and tell you where there could be potential issues when converting that to a scan to CAD order. So we do that both for new customers as well as established customers who might be scanning a particularly challenging space. And so they might scan it and send it to us and say, did we do this right? Is there something else that we could do to improve the quality of the scan? And I think in any case where we feel that the scan isn't high quality enough to produce an accurate scan to CAD order, we will automatically refund that order. You won't be charged for it, and we'll ask you to rescan that space.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the scan, just to clarify, the scan would get rejected, so it wouldn't get processed if it was like total junky data. Where it can get a little bit complicated is if there's like, something happened in a local area that like could have thrown something off, that we don't know it would have been accurate until we have a reason to that you send us the actual ground truth measurements. But we try to be good partners on this. Like, we never want you to walk away thinking like, like I did this and I got charged for this and it didn't meet the expectations that you set for me because of XYZ issue. Like, we want to make sure that you get taken care of.
Cool. Hawaii. I know who this is. I can't remember your name. Anyone addressing existing angled walls. Lots of older condo buildings have angles.
We do. Sorry if you want to take this, but I will say we have an interior design client who was one of her examples and main reasons for using it is she oftentimes has rooms that have unique architecture, I'll say. She just did a penthouse that had, I think, 8 walls or 8 windows, each at a different angle. And her sort of justification of using Canvas is that the amount of time it would take her to measure that, calculate all the angles, and then reproduce it in her program. She happens to use SketchUp, but that this makes it so that it's just as easy to capture a room with angled walls, unique architecture, as it is to capture a rectangular room.
Got it. All right, what else we got here?
About if the square footage cost will be based on floor or wall square footage, and I believe it's floor. It's based on the surface, the square footage of that home.
Okay.
So 1,000 square foot house will cost what?
$150.
$150.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And that's for 3D. 2D is 10 cents. Is going to be 10 cents, so it's going to be cheaper if you just want 2D drawings.
Okay. So in that island situation that came up,
mm-hmm.
if you took what it would have been before is if you took 2 scans of that room, one for the island and one for the kitchen, that's $39 a piece, right?
Technically, but if there's duplicates, then we'll just reject and refund one of the duplicates. So if it's like overlapping that significantly, we'll process it as a single.
So your the pricing structure now is going to be, or coming soon anyway, is going to be the total square footage for the whole house after you've put it together, or total square footage on each scan, or
you'll get an estimate in app off of the scans, but you'll be billed based off of the actual process square footage, because the estimate is going to be an estimate. A scan, like you might overlap and scan into the next room. We don't want to double charge you for that. So it's just going to be based off of the actual square footage that is processed into, in this case, Chief Architect.
Okay. I have another question about I think I heard you said you can annotate right on the scan.
Yeah.
So each room I could go into and take a measurement, length, width of the room, annotate that on my plan, and that would make it more accurate. Yeah, because you're going to use that to do that, right?
So we don't see your annotations because it's kind of private data. We consider it project data.
Okay.
You can send us a drawing, notes, whatever, via email, and we're also going to be adding some other ways to do that directly in the app as well. I recommend using the annotations feature to do that, just because it's going to make it easier for you to capture that information, to do it spatially. But we don't look at that data because it could be private client information, and we don't even have access to it, frankly.
Okay.
Cool. So Rick was saying, will the square footage cost be based on floor or wall square footage?
Yeah, I think we addressed that.
I already talked about it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm looking at some other things while you guys
looking at all the other questions.
it's like, anyway, that's half the fun of all of this. Let's see. I like to that. Yeah, I can flesh out. Okay, cool. All right. So this is awesome, you guys. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Vertical, like from floor to floor. Are you able to do anything to make sure that we're getting the right floor thickness, that kind of thing? If you take a couple of scans in the stairway, can you stitch it together?
It's going to depend on the home, how well that can be parsed out from the scan. Generally, it's hard to get that just from the scans in the same way that you can from doors. It's a lot easier to get wall thickness going from room to room. We do use different construction standards to do that, but that is something as well that you can send in your own measurements for floor thickness, and that will be incorporated into the scan.
So this is what I did when I sent you my plan, is I did a little pencil sketch of the plan that you guys were able to stitch together. I didn't send you any measurements or anything, so I just wanted to see how you guys, what it would come out with any of that stuff. But yeah, so that helps a lot when you get that information. All right, so we're just about out of time here. So again, everybody on the call, okay, you guys offer a free trial, a free scan?
Yeah, we'd be absolutely happy for anyone on this call to give them a free scan. So if you do have a iPhone 12 Pro or 12 Pro Max, if you do have an iPad Pro, or you can borrow one from a friend, that's going to be the best way to do it.
Yeah.
If you do have an older iPhone, then you can still try it. It's just going to have different accuracy, and it's not going to have that. Not going to have the Lidar sensor, so the capture experience is going to be a little bit different, but absolutely still able to try it out and see what the Chief files look like for yourself.
So if you want to take advantage of that, send me an email. Again, that's ben@canvas.io. So ben@canvas.io. I'll send you a promo code for you to enter when you process that scan, and we'll process one scan for you for free, so that you can take it and see how it compares with your current workflow, with your current measurements, and determine how that accuracy works for you. And then you can determine how you would end up using it in your daily work.
Cool.
And we have a ton of sample files if anyone needs to see sample Chief Architect outputs, and they want to see how that works in their particular workflow and templates and things like that. Also, feel free to email Ben, and we can send you our sample data.
Yeah. So a sample data package, and so there, if you don't have the hardware required, if you don't have a new iPad or iPhone, and you're curious if you want to make that investment, we have a range of rooms. You can download a kitchen, bathroom, bedrooms, whole homes, and that way you can sort of see the compatibility with Chief Architect, and you can play around and see how those files are organized. So that's another alternative too. You don't have the ability to do a scan on your own yet, and you are considering it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, one quick question I want to answer before we go. Vicki is asking, how does she watch previous shows? Head over to chiefexpertsacademy.com, go to the blog, and go to, well, you'll see them on the list here, but you can always go to the category called Chief Architect or Designer Show, and it'll take you to the list of all the shows. But this is, I post them all on the blog. You click on them and you can watch them there. You can also watch them on YouTube and Facebook as well.
And can people send you a email to let them know when it's available for Android?
Yep. Just send us an email. Let us know about their interest, and we will make sure that they get notified.
Yeah, you can send that all to me. I'm happy to take care of that for you.
All right. I'll make sure to post your email with the video here too. I think it is on the website. If you're watching it on the Chief Experts Academy site, you'll find it down in Ben's description, and you can send them an email from there. All right, cool. We're out of time here.
Very accessible. So.
All right, cool. Any last words, you guys?
Well, I'll just say, we know this is a new technology. We know people have a lot of questions. And so both myself and our customer service team are always happy to answer any questions that you may have. We know it's a shift in workflow. We know there are a lot of questions about new technology. And so we try to make ourselves as available as possible to answer questions, to review your scans, to hold your hand through this process. So thank you for having us on. I'll turn it over to Alex for any final words.
Cool.
That was basically everything that I was going to say. Is we know this is 3D capture is very new technology for most, and there's lots of questions that people have, and we try to make ourselves very available, very hands-on, especially during onboarding for people, especially before investing in anything, to talk through questions, talk through workflows. Hopefully, this presentation has indicated that it's just real people behind the scenes that want to help you integrate this new technology into your lives and workflows, and that we're very accessible and available, and here to help every step of the way.
Cool. All right, John, you got anything you want to add?
Cool.
I'm good.
You're good. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here today. This is
Thank you.
John and Ben and Alex from the Designer Show. See you guys next time. Bye now.